Jordan Montgomery looked great, but of course, the D-backs offense no-showed after their 14-run outburst, discussing the D-backs series finale loss to the St. Louis Cardinals.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Dbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com to see all of my latest work. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go. The mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly game. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store. On today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, we'll talk about the D-backs offense no showing after just a 14-run outburst the day before. We'll preview the next series against the Seattle Mariners, and we'll talk about why the D-backs should continue to keep their chins up and why the fans should continue to keep their chins up in segment number 3. But before we get into that podcast, I first want to say thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. We are trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's talk about that series finale against the St. Louis Cardinals, because man, oh man, that was frustrating. It was an early start time. 10:15 baseball for the D-backs. I was excited. I really want to see Jordan Montgomery. How was he going to respond after his season debut, looking absolutely dominant against the San Francisco Giants? Could he do it once again? And the question was answered in this game because it was a resounding yes. Jordan Montgomery once again just looked effortless. He looked very smooth. Maybe not effortless because he did have a wild pitch that led to some runs for the Cardinals, but 7 innings, only 87 pitches, 2 earned runs, 3 runs allowed. Jordan Montgomery has looked really good for the D-backs to start the year. It's so critical that the D-backs signed him, of course, because injuries have started to pile up with Merrill Kelly, with the Ryan Nelson, with the Erod. So that makes the Jordan Montgomery that much more important. And so far, through 2 turns to the rotation, he's looked like he's been worth the money that he's getting. Kind of surprised that no other team in Major League Baseball want to pay Jordan Montgomery. Maybe they didn't want to give him the 20 to 25 million a year like he wanted, but why didn't anyone else at least take the 1-year flyer on Jordan Montgomery? Very, very curious to see as to why other teams didn't at least take the flyer. There were other teams that were definitely more desperate than the D-backs at the time of the D-backs signing Jordan Montgomery. But now you look at the D-backs and you're like, thank God they did sign Jordan Montgomery, because there's not a team that would have been more desperate than the D-backs for Monty's services if he was not on the team right now with all the same injuries taking place. So thank God for Monty being on the team. He's been elite so far. He was really good in this game for the D-backs. He ran into some trouble. Some of it was self-inflicted with that wild pitch. Some of it was also because of the defense. Blaze Alexander, another error out there at shortstop. But with his bat, I'm okay with the errors as long as he continues at the 316, 371, 544 slash line that he's currently putting up on the season. But Jordan Montgomery was not bailed out by the offense in this game because, yes, he was good. He could have been a little bit cleaner around the edges, did make a couple mistakes. But if you give up 2 earned runs over a 7 innings pitch after seeing your team come off a 14-run outburst, you would expect that offense to at least put up 5 runs, right? I discussed on yesterday's podcast how The D-backs, the last 2 times they've scored double-digit runs in a game, they only scored 3 runs total in back-to-back games after scoring double-digit runs. And in this game, the day after scoring 14 runs, the D-backs are only able to put 1 run on the board total, only 1 run. D-backs were 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, just absolutely awful. And of course, once again, late game offense not showing up for the D-backs. Offense nowhere to be found. MIA in a really strong Jordan Montgomery performance. And if you look at the culprits, once again, Corbin Carroll, who was dropped in the lineup to the 7th hole, which is not something we would have ever expected entering the season. But I told you around game 26, the best decision for the D-backs was to play Corbin Carroll in the 7th hole. You would have thought Corbin Carroll had an amputation or something, because there's no reason for Corbin Carroll to bat number 7 in the D-backs lineup. But that's been the season for Carroll. His slash line now on the year, 208, 321, 260. He was 0 for 3 in the game, 2 strikeouts, and he just continues to look lost at the plate. And I don't have any take as to why he's struggling. Yes, he needs to fix his swing. Yes, it's really flat. That's leading to groundouts and fly balls, or groundouts and pop-ups. But I'm sure he's getting told that by a bunch of people in the clubhouse, his hitting coach. Like, there's nothing I could say via looking at the numbers, via watching the games, that he probably doesn't already know. So for Corbin Carroll, I think it's probably mental at this point, and he just needs to work through his struggles. Another guy that needs to work through his struggles is Eugenio Suarez, who is over 4 in this game. He also needs to pick it up. His slash line now, 234, 308, 351. Gabriel Moreno seems like he's starting to turn a corner. We're going to need other players in this lineup to turn a corner as well, if this D-backs offense wants to continue being one of the best in the National League, because we're going to need this offense to continue to be one of the best if they want to tread water with all the injuries to this pitching staff, because the late game offense in this game wasn't great. We got no late game offense, and the bullpen also wasn't great late in this game. Bryce Jarvis, one of his worst outings, walked 2 guys, gave up a hit, was able to manufacture bases loaded with Andrew Southrank coming in the game after him to potentially get him out of the jam. And Southrank gives up the big hit that scores 2 runs for the St. Louis Cardinals. So the combination of both Jarvis and Southrank were not very effective in this game. D-backs offensively, late game pitching from the bullpen, not effective in this game. And one thing that I want to see the D-backs stop doing from a Torey Lovullo standpoint, stop resting guys this early into the season. Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel, and Gabriel Moreno all not playing the 26th game of the season. Like, Marte and Gurriel have been hot all year. Moreno has been heating up recently. Stop taking the hottest bats out of the lineup when it's still so early in the season. These guys don't need rest days right now. You're literally getting a rest day on Thursday. Why do they need back-to-back rest days? I just don't think it's a very smart move by Torey Lovullo. This D-backs team is struggling. We're not getting late-game offense, and you're going to take out the best players in your lineup. For an off day, a day before a off day. I just think it makes absolutely 0 sense, and I wish Torey Lovullo just played his guys more. Just play your best players, Torey Lovullo. You did a good job of doing it in the postseason. You need to do it more in the regular season. Play your best players. But now we'll talk about what the D-backs need to do if they want to win the next series against the Seattle Mariners. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk you through it. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of five-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. We've all been there, either as a player or fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift up your head, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for the personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. Now, the D-backs are off on Thursday, but they face off against the Mariners on Friday. Super excited for this series because I have a bunch of Mariners friends who are in my current office, and I do have a couple of friendly wagers with them that I believe the D-backs are going to finish ahead of the Mariners in the standings. I think the D-backs are going to finish with more wins than the Mariners by the end of the season. Both of them are tied with 12 wins at the time of me recording this podcast at 9:36 on a Wednesday night. So the wager right now is super close, but I believe the D-backs can still finish ahead of the Mariners, and I will kind of talk about why in segment number 3. But for segment number 2, the D-backs definitely have a chance to win a series against Seattle. They have a 3-game series, and I believe the D-backs can definitely take 2 out of 3 against Seattle. Now, we don't know exactly what the pitching matchups are going to be. Zach Gallen is scheduled for Friday. We don't know who's going to be going for Seattle. And then the rest of the series, we don't know who's going for either team, the D-backs or the Mariners. So when looking at this series right now, I would say the most important thing is this Mariners pitching staff versus this D-backs offense, because it really doesn't matter who the Mariners are going to throw out. Everyone is pretty good. When you look at this Mariners rotation, yes, the Castillos and the George Kirbys have really struggled this season. Those are still 2 elite starting pitchers. I know the numbers are not there for them right now, but there's still too much of a track record. More Luis Castillo than George Kirby, but Kirby's in the middle of his prime, and he has some absolutely filthy stuff. So even though the numbers are not there right now for Castillo or Kirby, I still believe they're both elite pitchers that are just struggling right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they turn it around against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And even if we don't see those guys, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller are both having fantastic starts to the season. So the top 4 in the Mariners rotation is absolutely nasty, even if not all of them are pitching at an elite level right now. Then you look at the bullpen for the Mariners, really strong as well. I mean, seriously, they have 8 dudes right now with a sub-3 ERA. Their top 8 pitchers, they don't have a sub-3 ERA, excuse me. Their top 8 pitchers, though, in terms of innings pitched from their bullpen, have a sub 4 ERA, though. I will say that. And 6 of them have a sub 3 ERA. So the rotation is filthy. The bullpen is filthy for the Seattle Mariners. And for the D-backs, they're going to need their offense to keep it going and continue to be one of the best offenses in the National League. But what they don't need is a feast or famine offense, or an offense that doesn't know how to score late, because that's been one of their issues this year. It's either 14 runs, or it's like what we saw in this game where it's only 1 run, or it's the D-backs scoring 14 runs in the first 6 innings and then not doing anything after that. We need this D-backs offense to continue to score early. We love to see that, but also trickle in some runs late. Maybe the bullpen wants to step up late as well. That would be very nice for this D-backs offense. Don't want to get this Mariners offense going, because that is a big issue that this Mariners team have right now, is their lack of offensive production. And for the D-backs, again, Corbin Carroll, Eugenio Suarez, we need you. Corbin Carroll grew up as a Washington, Seattle guy. This is his hometown. Hopefully being in a comfortable environment, maybe having some families show up to the games. Hopefully that could put Corbin Carroll in the right headspace. And the Eugenio Suarez, he was acquired this offseason from the Seattle Mariners. So could that help out the D-backs being back in a place where he's been the last couple of years? Would that be more comfortable for him? I don't know. We need those two guys to get going offensively. Eugenio can deliver some monster power. We know he's got it in the tank. Corbin Carroll has that dynamic power speed combination. We would love to see him start delivering some big hits, because he has not done that enough this season. So late game offense, we want to see it. Eugenio, Corbin Carroll get going. We want to see that as well. So hopefully against this great pitching staff, the offense can continue to put up runs. But on the other side, for the D-backs pitching staff, this Mariners offense, not really that good when you look at the metrics in Major League Baseball. They are 4th from the bottom in runs per game and below league average in both average and OPS. This Mariners offense right now, it's just not very good. And the funniest thing about it, when you look at this Mariners lineup, 2 of the best players right now in their lineup, they only have 3 guys on this team with over an 800 OPS. 2 of those guys, one of them, Josh Rojas, the other guy who is on the 10-day injured list right now, Dominic Canzone. So 2 of the best offensive players right now for the Seattle Mariners are 2 former D-backs. So they could directly thank us for whatever offensive production they have this year. Yeah, it may not be very good, but the only offensive production that the Mariners have this season is courtesy of us giving them some players. So Seattle Mariner fans should be very thankful of us. Zach Gallen going in game number 1 against the Seattle Mariners with an offense that has struggled this year could be a good game for Zach Gallen to potentially have a little bit of a bounce back after struggling against the San Francisco Giants. 5 innings, 5 earned runs, a opponent that sees Zach Gallen a bunch throughout the regular season. Maybe a start against an opponent that is not that familiar in the Seattle Mariners could be perfect for Zach Gallen. He seemed to do really good against American League teams. He dominated the New York Yankees earlier this season. So I think Gallen does really good against teams that don't see him very often. So hopefully in game number 1, he can set the tone in the series with a big win for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now in segment number 3, I want to talk about why the D-backs should continue to keep their chins up despite them struggling this season. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the Diamond in your prize picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your prize picks entries today. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on prize picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. My favorite thing to do is to put LeBron James stats all together. Give me over on the points, over on the rebounds. And when I win money on that, I feel so good. And if you want to feel good, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Welcome back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. I want to ask you, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings your can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and talk about why D-backs fans should continue to keep their chins up and why they should not get too down on the season just yet. One of the reasons is just flat out still too early in the season, only 26 games in, folks. D-backs are still in striking distance, 3 games back of the NL West, and that's part of my philosophy and explanation as to why we should continue to keep our chins up, because it's too early, and the D-backs are the highest scoring team in the National League at 149 runs scored. They are 10 runs ahead of the LA Dodgers at plus 139. Best run differential in the NL West and second best run differential in the National League. And I just believe if you have an offense that good, you should eventually be a good team. Now, could their offense start to regress to the mean a little bit? Yes, surely it can. Maybe the D-backs won't be the high scoring team in the National League the whole season, but you can also make the argument that it definitely can, or at least be a top 3 offense the whole year, because you did add pieces from the offseason and Jock, Gritchick, Eugenio Suarez, right? And then if you look at the current construction of the team, Corbin Carroll, he's not hitting right now. Eugenio Suarez, he's not hitting right now. There is players who we know can produce at a higher level who are not producing right now, and the D-backs still have the highest scoring team in the National League. If Corbin Carroll, the MVP candidate, unanimous runaway rookie of the year, doesn't ever come around, then yeah, this D-backs offense will probably regress to the mean. But guess what? If Corbin Carroll comes around as this D-backs offense starts to dip a little bit, then they probably will stay where they at right now at this current level. Corbin Carroll, with what he can do with his bat, with his power, with his speed, contact ability, this offense can get even better if Corbin Carroll ever turns the corner offensively. And then if you add in and sprinkle in Eugenio Suarez bombs from time to time, this offense, I think, could get to another level. And I believe this D-backs offense needs to be top 3 in the National League going forward for at least until the All-Star break, because this rotation and pitching staff just isn't healthy enough. It sounds like Merrill Kelly might not be back until the All-Star break, and Toy Lavello was non-committal about even the All-Star break, so that does not make us feel good. Eugenio Suarez, he may not come back to late May, early June. Ryan Nelson is currently out. We got a bunch of relievers out in the Castros and Kyle Nelsons, even though that might be addition by subtraction. A lot of bodies down for the D-backs right now. So their best course of action when it comes to winning games might be their offense. And being the high scoring team is nice, but we need that to be sustainable, and we need the offense to score more late in games. But because their offense has been so good this season, and because I believe eventually their rotation will get healthy, I think it's one of the reasons why we shouldn't get too down on the season. As long as the NL West looks like this, which is vulnerable, I believe we should still be optimistic about this D-backs team. I know it's been a roller coaster ride to start the season. I know there's been a lot of ups and downs, but I think eventually this D-backs team will get healthy. And like we discussed before the season started, the Dodgers rotation is shaky. The pitching staff for the Dodgers is undoubtedly shaky. Glass and Yamamoto are, of course, studs, but the rest of the rotation, very, very shaky to say the least. So the NL West is definitely vulnerable. When you're looking at the rest of the National League, also vulnerable. If you look at the wild card standings right now, as bad as the D-backs have been, they're only 3 games back of both the NL West title and a wild card spot. So D-backs are definitely battered. They're definitely down right now, but as the season progresses, they're going to get more healthy as that rotation gets healthy, as that bullpen gets healthy, and hopefully we make some changes in the bullpen. This D-backs team should only get better as long as this offense can be top 3 in the league. I believe this D-backs team can tread water until guys start to come back. And if the D-backs can do that, I believe they can make a major run in the second half of the season and start to peak once we enter the playoffs. I'm looking at the standings. I believe the D-backs are definitely better than most of the teams ahead of them in the standings right now, specifically the wild card standings. So have faith, hold optimism. Eventually, this D-backs team will get healthy, but I believe they need their offense to continue being one of the best in baseball, or we're going to need to see some late game offense for this D-backs team to really get going. And some of the pieces that need to get going for this D-backs lineup is Corbin Carroll and Eugenio Suarez. If those guys get going, this ceiling of the offense can go to another level. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.